First Corinthians chapter 14, verses 34 and 35. Women should be quiet in church. They can't talk. They can't pray aloud. They can't preach. They can't prophesy. They can't do anything but sit there and listen. If they want to know something, they got to wait till they get home and talk to their husbands about it. That's the basic interpretations for 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verses 34 and 35. And for the past 1,000 years or more, most churches in Europe and most churches in Asia Minor, North Africa, and of course North America were observing that, just as that. Women were considered to be improper if they tried to speak or say anything while church services were going. You couldn't talk in church if you're a woman. So, of course, in modern times, there's been a lot of debate over this scripture, and it turns out there's good reason for that debate. When you check the ancient copies of 1 Corinthians, it seems that the author didn't actually write that. And the reason why they think that is because many of the ancient copies don't actually have that verse in that same location. When you check all the different copies they have, and they have thousands of copies, that particular passage is actually at the bottom of chapter 14 instead of where it is in most Bibles. So they're thinking, the scholars of New Testament and Christian history, they're saying that this was actually added because it's all over the place. You know, and this copy is here and the next copy is there. So they think that is what they call interpolation. You know, it's inserted. It's an addition. Somebody put it there. And it seems that it was done early on in Christian history. So they think that some scribe actually added that in, maybe on the side in some notes, and then later scribes actually put it into the actual text. Another reason why they think that this verse doesn't belong in the actual text is because 3 chapters early in chapter 11, the author of 1 Corinthians actually says that women can pray and prophesy in church as long as they have their head covered. So that's a clear contradiction. So in chapter 14, the author is saying in 1 Corinthians, women can't talk at all. They can't make a peep. But in chapter 11, you're saying that they can pray and prophesy. So which one is it? Can they pray aloud and prophesy in church, or do they have to keep silent? It's a clear contradiction, and they think that somebody added in. Now, you would think if these New Testament scholars, these leaders of Christianity, these churches, if they really were confident that this is something that the author of 1 Corinthians did not write and it was added in early on in Christian history, why would they include it in modern day texts? That's a good question. It turns out they do that all over the Bible. There are a lot of passages, verses, chapters that is in question and serious doubt, and they have really good reason to believe that these things were added, but they leave it in. Some of the scholars say they left it in because for historical significance. You know, it's always been there, so we're just going to leave it there. My personal opinion is they want women to be quiet in church. They're trying to suppress and keep women in a position of submission. Actually, like that verse says, you go on and read 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verses 34 and 35. It goes on to say that the women should be quiet, be in silence, and be in submission like the law also says. Well, that's the other problem with that. The law doesn't actually say that. Yeah, the Pentateuch, the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, or the law of Moses, there's nothing in Hebrew tradition, Hebrew law that says that women should not talk during worship services. So that's another reason why they don't believe that that verse actually is from the author, because whoever wrote that actually didn't know the law. If they did know the law, they were lying. Right? Because it doesn't say that women should be quiet in the law. So anyway, why would you leave it in? I know a lot of people thinking, well, we can just go to the original. We check out the original 1 Corinthians and see what it says, and then we can compare that to all these copies that we have, and that way it'll settle it. We'll know what the author truly meant. Well, like all the other books of the Bible, there is no original. That's right. No original book of the Bible exists. Whatever the prophets and the apostles wrote millennia ago, we don't have it. They don't exist. All we have are copies, a bunch of copies, like thousands of copies. And so modern day scholars, they have to go through all these different copies, thousands of copies, and they just have to basically use their most educated guess, their best guess, to figure out what the prophets and apostles originally meant or originally wrote, or what they were inspired to say. But again, it would just be their most educated guess, their best guess, because we don't have the originals. Genesis through Revelation, none of the original documents of the Bible, all the books and all the letters, none of them exist today. All we have is copies. So we can't get to the bottom of 1 Corinthians chapter 14 because we don't have the original. I'm overstating it, but I'm just trying to make sure you understand. And it's not just chapter 14. They actually think that chapter 10 verses 1 through 22 are also like an addition. Like it's a letter fragment. Maybe the author that they assume was Paul the apostle. Maybe the author wrote another letter and only a fragment of that survived. So they added that into 1 Corinthians. Yeah, stuff like that all over the Bible. That's the main reason why I've rejected the Bible, because none of the originals exist. And all the copies, they are different one from another. So my feelings are the same, like I said in the previous video. If God, with all his power, I mean, he's all powerful, he's all knowing, and if he decided that these letters and these books were not worth protecting to make sure that modern day mankind would have them intact, then I can't believe they were meant for us. I even have trouble believing that they were even inspired at all. Because again, if this was a very important message that God wanted us to have, he would have protected it. He's more than capable of protecting us. He's God. He's all powerful. There's nothing to protect something he wants to keep around for us to have. So he didn't protect it. So I'm left to believe that he didn't inspire it. It's not for us. Somebody created these things. Either way it goes, we don't have the original. So whatever you're reading today is the product of a few hundred men over 1,500 years sitting down, going through all these ancient copies and deciding on their own what the apostles and the prophets before them, what they were trying to say. Their best guessing. So it's not inspired. And they really do have good reason to believe that this stuff, these copies, were basically tampered with. That's why all of the Bibles today are just versions. Yeah, I know you see some Bibles saying translation, but they're saying a translation of a version that was made like maybe 500 years ago. But there are no translations. There's no transliterations. There are only versions, okay? Because nobody has the originals. So anyway, I say reject it all. But bottom line, whoever wrote this did not want women to speak in church, did not want women to have roles and positions of authority. They wanted them to be in submission. So there it is. All right, I'll see you in the next video.